Recently, when I've wanted to introduce data types in Python, I've started with two data types, lists and tuples, that seem very similar, and then talked about the differences. I have decided I think it's better to go the opposite way and instead start with two data types that seem very different, and then talk about how, even though they are different, they share a lot of common functionality. So the data types I want to look at in this video are lists and strings. And the way I want to start out is a traditional way of starting out, introducing a programming language, which is to display hello world on the screen. So let's see how to do that in Python using the string data type. So s equals, this is saying my variable name is going to be s, and I'm going to assign it to be, and then I'll let Python know it should be a string by using quotation marks. You can use either single quotation marks or double quotation marks. I'll use double. And then I say, hello world. And then I evaluate here in this Jupyter notebook by holding down Shift and hitting return. Okay, s is now saved with this string value. And if you want to check that it's really a string, you can use the type function in Python. And here I get that, yes, it is a string. That's what this str stands for. And if I want to display it to the screen, then I can do that by saying print s. And here it gets displayed to the screen. Okay, so that is a string example. Let's do a list example. I'll call the variable myList, and I'll set it to be equal to, and just like how the quotation mark up here told Python this was a string, here I'm going to use a square bracket to tell Python this should be a list. And I'm just going to put some integers in here, 3141. And if I check what's the type of this object, I get that it's a list. So let's see some of the common functionality between strings and lists. For example, if you want to get the initial element in either of these, either this 3 or this capital H, you can use what's called indexing. And indexing is also done with a square bracket, just like this square bracket. And I can say s square brackets 0, and indexing in Python starts at 0, so that takes a little while to get used to. And so that got me the initial letter in hello world, or the initial character. Same syntax will work for myList. Okay, I get that 3 is the initial element here. Another similarity between strings and lists is they both have a length function defined on them. So I can say length of s, and that's 12. Okay, these 5 characters, these 2 characters, these 5 characters, so it is counting the space and the comma. And can use the same len for length for myList, and I get that it's length 4. If you want to get the last element, for example, in hello world, you might try s and then give me length of s. But because the indexing starts at 0, it finishes before we actually get to the length. Okay, maybe that's easier to see with myList. Starts at 0, so this is going to be the third position. So if I do myList square brackets 4, myList square brackets length of myList, then it's not going to work. So one way you could do it would be to say length of s minus 1. But that's not the usual way to get the last element in Python. The usual way is to use this abbreviation s square brackets -1. And then that gets me this letter D here. And the same thing will work for a list. Another example related to this indexing is what's called slicing. So I can say, for example, s give me from the first to the fourth character. And so where did this come from? Well, we go 0, 1, 2, 3. And a tradition in Python is to usually not include the right endpoint. So in this case, usually do not include this fourth here. And one reason for that is, for example, if you do s colon 5, which is the exact same as s from 0 to 5. Then a nice thing about not including the right endpoint is you can look at this and instantly know that it has 5 characters. Okay, whereas if it did include the fifth, then it would have 6 characters. So that is one reason for this convention of not including the right endpoint. If you want to go, for example, from the third character to the end, well, one way to do that is just leave what comes after the colon blank. So that says start at the third character, this L here, and go to the end. And these all work the exact same for lists. For example, this says start at the first element in my list and go to the end. Okay, here is my list. So start at the first where we start counting at 0 and go to the end. One other aspect of this slicing is you can put in a third argument here. So you can say, for example, give me the string s from the first to the 7th, go up by 2. And so what was that? That was saying start at the first, then the third, then the 5th, then should have been the 7th, but we remember that we usually do not include the right endpoint in Python. So that was why it was just these 3, the first, the third, and the 5th. And if you want to get, for example, every other letter in S, you can use this abbreviation. So that's like saying start at the beginning, go as far as possible, go up by 2. And if you want to get the complement to this, then, so for example, this was all the even indexed terms. If you want to get all the odd index terms, then you want to start at the first, go up by 2, and go all the way to the end. And so here, it's very, very similar to our 172, except instead of stopping before we reach the 7th, here it goes as far as possible. So it gets all the way to the end with this D here. Okay, I think that is enough content for this video. Thank you for watching.